Stop looking for an exit. Fromville isn't trying to keep you in, it's trying to keep a 500-year-old plague from getting out. In this town, you aren't a resident. You're a biofilter, a storage unit for a corruption that refuses to die.
Night in Fromville doesn't just fall. It gathers, wrapping the town in a weighty embrace. The air thickens, shadows stretch, and the community seems to hold its breath, as if it understands that darkness isn't just a passage of time, but the onset of something deeper. Here, days don't flow as they do in the outside world. While people talk about weeks, months, and even winters, the sky and soil remain indifferent. Time only shifts when something significant occurs. A birth, a death, a revelation, or a fracture among neighbors. Between these moments, life drifts in a muted suspension, as if the town is waiting for a signal that only it can perceive. Everyone continues their previous routines, not out of longing for the past, but because no other path seems to stick. Medical students become doctors, compelled by the wounds that need mending. Members of the military step into the role of sheriff, as fear seeks a singular face to confront. The deputy remains vigilant, watching roads that lead nowhere. Even those who attempt to retreat find themselves drawn back by necessity crises and the silent pressure of others' survival. Here, roles don't fade, they solidify. It feels less like people choosing their duties and more like the town recalling each person's purpose. Illness doesn't sweep through the population like one might expect in a crowded, anxious settlement with limited resources. Injuries occur, brutal and sudden, but infections decay, and slow declines rarely take hold. Residents hover at the brink of death, only to pull back, not entirely healed but functional, as if the town demands them to remain upright and breathing, capable of whatever unseen task is at play. They aren't restored, they're preserved. The clinic serves more as a barrier against disappearance than a sanctuary for recovery. When a creature dies, the victory feels incomplete. The body doesn't simply become a corpse, something to bury and forget. It feels unfinished, as if the death itself has nowhere to go. This absence becomes undeniable when Fatima's pregnancy takes a turn that defies both biology and hope. The nausea, weakness, and strange sensation that something within her doesn't belong build toward a birth that isn't a new beginning, but a return. What emerges isn't a child, but the same familiar face that had been lost before, as if the violence that ended it had merely been stored and delivered again through living flesh. The town was never designed to confine people. It was built to prevent death from seeping out. In 1506, a deal was made to contain a corruption, a miasma that refused to fade. Since then, the town has adhered to a harsh law, the conservation of the taint. Here, death can't be annihilated, it can only shift between bodies. Fatima's experience wasn't a miracle of life, it was a forced migration. When Smiley died in Season 2, his essence, his death husk, didn't dissolve into the earth. Instead, it became a stray frequency, a toxic residue seeking a host. Fatima became the filter. The system chose her because she was a void, making her the ideal vessel for Smiley's rebirth. She isn't a mother, she's a vessel. The spoiled crops she consumed provided the compost necessary to nurture the gestation of a creature. In Fromville, you don't give birth to life, you rebirth the dead. This process doesn't suggest resurrection in any comforting way. There's no miracle, no restoration of what was lost. Instead, it's a transfer, a continuation. Death didn't vanish when the creature fell. It lingered, attaching itself to a body that could withstand the strain and returned in a familiar form. The horror lies not in the idea that something evil can rise again, but in the fact that death itself cannot escape this place and must continually find new ways to exist. This sheds light on the medical sufficiency paradox. Why is there no cancer? Why do fatal wounds heal without infection? Because the residents function as storage units. You don't let a container break if it holds a plague. Christie, Boyd, and others exist in a state of maintenance survival because the system requires their bodies to remain intact for the next transfer. A natural death, like infection or old age, would signify leakage or waste. The tunnels beneath the town amplify that fear. They aren't empty, they're chambers of waiting, filled with the dormant shapes of other creatures, as if the earth itself is holding its breath like the town does. Down there, the notion of a simple cycle, kill, survive, move on, collapses. What appears to be an ending above may merely be preparation below. The earth doesn't reject what dies in Fromville, it keeps it. The creatures in the tunnels aren't a species, they are manifested residue. Each monster is the finished product of a human who served as a filter. They resemble people because they were the individuals who arrived in 1506. They embody the accumulated deaths of 5 centuries, given physical form so they can be stored in the chamber beneath the hatch. When Smiley was killed, the inventory was down by 1. The system simply initiated a restoration sequence through Fatima to fill that gap. New arrivals come with the same inevitability as storms. No road leads in, no path explains how they crossed the distance, yet they appear just when the town has lost too many people, when grief and violence have thinned the population to a fragile line. It's hard not to wonder if they are replacements in the most literal sense, not for jobs or beds, but for the invisible weight that accumulates with each death. If death cannot leave, then something else must arrive to bear it. Objects persist as well. Trinkets, photographs, scraps of clothing, toys, these tunnels hold them like relics, not discarded but collected. Each item hints at a person, a moment, a final day that didn't simply vanish. Memory in Fromville is unreliable, filled with gaps and distortions, yet the physical remnants remain, as if the place itself refuses to forget, even when the people do. It's easier to lose a story than to lose a body. Easier to forget a face than to erase the fact that it once breathed here. What ties all of this together isn't simple cruelty, hunger, or punishment. It's maintenance. The town doesn't act like a predator wanting its prey gone. It behaves like a structure that can't afford to collapse. People must stay alive enough to act, connected enough to hurt each other, hopeful enough to keep trying. Crisis fuels movement, movement breeds change, and change seems to be the only thing that propels whatever process is underway. In the quiet stretches between disasters, Fromville feels less like a home and more like a held breath. No one knows who started it or why, and the place offers no clues that it remembers either. The original purpose, if there was one, has been buried beneath cycles of repetition. What remains is a self-sustaining cycle, danger that cannot fully destroy, survival that cannot fully liberate, death that cannot entirely end. The people endure, the creatures return, and the ground retains what it is given. The existential dread isn't that you can't leave, it's that you shouldn't. If a resident ever truly escapes, they're not just taking themselves out, they're carrying a 500-year-old miasma into the outside world. The town is a quarantine zone. The monsters are the guards, and the humans are the biofilters keeping the world clean. Fromville doesn't consume you, it utilizes you to keep the end of the world confined. Ultimately, the most unsettling truth isn't that escape is difficult or that monsters roam at night. It's that the town seems uninterested in endings altogether. Everything here is arranged for continuity: the roles, the bodies, the fear, and the fleeting sparks of hope. Lives aren't simply taken, nor are they restored. They are used, passed through, and folded back into a place that never quite sleeps and never fully wakes, waiting for the next moment significant enough to make time move again.